Hello, my name is Alicia Shapiro with AInews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the latest developments and newest innovations in the world of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Chris Williams, Chief Operating Officer at Interaction Associates, a company that's pioneered the interaction method more than 50 years ago and has helped thousands of leaders and teams improve collaboration and meeting effectiveness. In today's conversation, we'll explore the findings from Interaction Associates' new white paper, AI Has Entered the Meeting, the opportunities and challenges leaders face with AI meeting assistance, and best practices for balancing the technology with human facilitation, and what effective meetings will look like in the years ahead. So I appreciate you joining us today, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to have you here too. Interaction Associates pioneered the interaction method more than 50 years ago, like I mentioned above, shaping how organizations think about facilitation and collaboration. So, how does that legacy influence the way that you're now evaluating AI meeting tools and their role in today's workplace?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I'll start off by talking a little bit about the history of the company because I think
Yeah,
that's really important.
sure.
So, the company was actually started by two architects.
Hmm.
And as a trained architect, you're always thinking, like, how do I design a building? And so, one of the ways to design a building is to go out and really get stakeholder input and stakeholder engagement because you want to understand the use of the building and the functionality and the utility of the building. So, as architects, the two founders of our company, by the name of David Strauss and Michael Doyle, they really got interested in understanding how do people actually work together and collaborate to get results, because you have to collaborate to design a really well-designed building. Long story short, they got into this whole world of what's known as group process dynamics and essentially started studying, as architects, human interaction. So how do people actually interact and work together? And the container in which a lot of people interact is this container of a meeting. You're in a meeting, and a lot of employees experience this all day long. Well, the big finding from Strauss and Doyle was that most meeting problems are not about the content. It's not about what you're talking about. It's actually about the process. It's the way the meeting is designed, it's the process on how the conversation is being carried. And the example I'll give you, Alicia, is if you just want to think back to like problems with meetings that you can imagine, just give me in a few examples of some problems that you typically face. What's some examples?
The first thing that comes to mind is this could have been an email.
Yeah, could have been an email. Exactly.
Some people may have issues with the hybrid workplace, I would imagine. They're not
Yeah.
in the office, and how do you facilitate that collaboration?
How do we engage people that are remote?
Yep.
How is our information management? Are we looking at the same thing? Is everyone talking about the same topic in the same way at the same time? So if you were to dissect all those things, our original research shows that 90% of meeting problems, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's uniform. 90% of your meeting problems are process related, right? It's
Wow.
we don't have the right people, no one's keeping track of time, nobody has notes, right? So
Yeah.
all of these things are process dimensions. And so the interaction method is our approach. It's a process lens, but it's all about building shared responsibility so that as a leader, you're not doing everything yourself. You're
Mhm.
getting a timekeeper, you're getting a recorder. And so AI in this context is very interesting because AI meeting assistants are designed to solve for that recorder role, right? That
Mhm.
capturing of notes. And so when I'm thinking about evaluating AI meeting assistant tools, I'm looking through a lens of a process lens. Like, what's the process that the technology is either enabling or hindering from a human interaction standpoint? So we have to remember that because AI is essentially a tool, especially for these AI meeting assistants. There's lots of functionality that the AI can and cannot do, but we have to be careful with saying, how is this being deployed in a meeting that actually gets results? Because although AI is amazing, there are some downsides that people need to think about the deployment of that. So that would be my answer. You really want to look through it from a process perspective and really begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to solve for in the business? And then you can work backwards from there and see, okay, what's the right tool to solve that problem or solve that issue?
I think that's such a smart approach.
And I will
Yeah.
say that AI meeting assistants are amazing in the sense of capturing notes and capturing action items. But one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that if you look at the AI output, sometimes it's going to give you a list of 30 action items, and it's doing its best to try to get action items. But we would go so far as to say, and this is what we would teach in our facilitation training workshops, is we would say it's the facilitator's responsibility for really building that firm, tight, clear agreement. Because if the agreements are loose and people are throwing around phrases in a meeting, the AI is going to make some assumptions and it's going to hear things. And then as the leader, you have to sift through this output at the end of the meeting, which obviously takes time. And so the best analogy I would give for really strong agreement building is think of a commercial flight that you're on. So if you get on any flight, Delta, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're sitting in the emergency exit row, what does the flight attendant do with you before the aircraft takes off?
Yeah, they make sure you can help people out the door
Yeah,
and
they give specific instructions to each person, and furthermore, they have you have a verbal agreement. Are you physically able to open the
right.
door? Do you have enough strength to push this 80-pound door open? Because like you're a critical player in the event the plane goes down. So they get
Yeah.
a verbal agreement from every single person. So I'm using that analogy because in meetings often, most people, like anything, there's an art to doing things. And so our organization, Interaction Associates, we would say we have the art and science of effective meeting skills
Hmm.
and using people, but using technology as well. And it's the effective art of the facilitator to really get that agreement. If you can get that agreement in an explicit way, it only will make your AI output better. But
Mhm.
if the agreement building from the person is not explicit and clear, the AI output is just going to be a mirror of that. It's going to be chaotic, it's going to be long. Somebody's going to have to wait through it. So I use the mirror analogy because I think it's a good analogy of, what goes in is a little bit of what you're going to get out.
Yeah, that's so important to remember for sure. It's something that I think we all know, but like we don't realize it at the same time.
Because most of the time we're just going through the motions, but we're not stepping back and slowing down and saying, what are
Yeah.
we really trying to do here? Or what's really happening? Like we're in the meeting itself. It's really hard to see what's happening. It's
Mm.
almost like you have to pull yourself out of your body and look down and be like, oh, yeah, I see. These two people are talking about this one thing over here. And these three people are talking about this totally different topic. And the meeting's off track and no one's driving it forward. You have to be able to get outside of yourself and really sift through with a special lens, really.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In your recently released white paper, AI has entered the meeting, was released along with the toolkit for leaders. What prompted this report and what do you see as the most urgent need it addresses for organizations right now?
Yeah, really good question, Alicia. So, in the last 24 months, we've seen just a flood of AI meeting assistants enter the marketplace. I looked recently on G2, which is a survey or a software comparison website, and they now formally list up to 97 different AI meeting
Wow.
assistants on their website. Now, I'll say that because 2 weeks ago I looked at it and it was 92.
Oh,
So, five new entrants have entered in the last 2 weeks, right? You have this rapid proliferation of AI meeting assistants where you've got a lot of big players, a lot of small players competing in the marketplace, and they're really trying to get people to experiment and use it. And so, with the generative AI mixed in, it's a new type of technology, but people are applying it in the meeting construct. And
mhm.
so, with our organization, because we have such a rich history of meeting skills from an effectiveness standpoint, we thought it was really important to put out a publication that basically talks about what is an AI meeting assistant, number one.
Mhm.
Number two, how does it work? What's the functionality of actually how the technology actually works? Because people need to understand some of the mystery behind the curtain of how it's actually working. And then number three is to really think about, okay, as a meeting leader or a facilitator, what are some things that you should put in place in your own leadership or facilitation practice that actually will help make the AI better? How do you do that? Because there's specific things you can do that make the output better. And we also want to think about the human element of things because you're dealing with people here. Until agents take over and every meeting is AI agents, which I don't know if anybody really wants that these
Yeah.
days, but we have to be mindful that there's people that have emotional needs, that have psychological safety needs, that have needs for connection. We have to remember those things and not just make it super technical where everything is going to be solved for by technology. So that was the main reason for writing the white paper and putting that out, just so there's something out of the marketplace that people can look at and get some ideas around.
Yeah, I think that's important. As with anything, you need a manual, a guidebook with
Yes,
anything new. So that makes sense.
yes,
It's so smart of you guys.
yes.
And in that report, you highlight how many companies are adopting AI meeting assistants without a clear strategy. What are some biggest risks or challenges that you see when organizations rely too heavily on the AI tools?
Yeah, I would say number one, that there's this underlying assumption that just because you're using technology, that the technology has got it 100%. So I've
Yeah.
actually been in meetings, Alicia, where I was in a meeting a couple months ago. This was a committee that I volunteer on that has other organizations involved in, so other people, and there were about 10 people in the meeting. And somebody said, we're going to turn on the Zoom AI companion, and that's going to take all the notes and do everything. At the end of the day, after the meeting, something happened with that output, and they actually didn't get the recording and they didn't
Oh,
get the action
no.
items. And it was like a 90-minute meeting
Oh,
with like detailed things, and nobody was taking notes except me on the back end on my own computer. I'm like writing down things because that's my habit and style.
yeah.
And I get this message from the organizer saying, oh my gosh, I don't have any notes from the meeting. Does anybody have anything to share?
Wow.
There's that, just will the technology work? The other thing I would say is I'm going to use an analogy like building a house, right? So imagine you're a carpenter and you're trying to install crown molding maybe in a room. And if one wall is 20 feet long, you might use one of these fancy laser measures that will measure the distance from one wall to the other. That's a very accurate way to do it, right? But if the part of the wall is only 3 feet long, and it comes out in the middle of a room, you don't have anything to put the actual end of the instrument again. It actually doesn't work. You actually need like a tape measure to do that. So it's making the assumption that just because you have the tool in AI doesn't mean it's appropriate for every situation at hand. And so I'll talk about a couple risks real quick. I think one
Yeah.
risk is just if you're using AI for sensitive conversations or confidential conversations, there's a big risk there because someone may not feel comfortable speaking out or saying something real, because what if that gets back to the senior leader 2 levels higher?
Right.
Is there a risk of that? Are we going to have a real conversation, or are we somehow thinking maybe this is going to be tracked or sent somehow, right? Another thing is just security and compliance. I think with a lot of our current customers who are primarily larger organizations, there is a lot of questions about AI, particularly around a security standpoint and a compliance standpoint. I know a lot of them have said, we're not allowing you to use certain AI meeting assistants unless the IT team has vetted it. We need to understand where this data is being sit, where it's processed from a data processing standpoint, because they may be a pharmaceutical company. They may be talking about really sensitive information. So I think there's the security element, the compliance element, and really just the trust element to really understand. And then the final one I would say would be the output. Like, is somebody actually taking the time to validate the outputs? Because if AI gets something wrong, even at a minutia level, that could really be used in a bad way around strategic decision making or actions. And so I think there's that human element that we always want to keep in the mix and just make sure that we're really using the tool in a responsible way.
And that goes well into my next question because we were talking about how technology can glitch or fail. I bet you gave that example of no one took notes except for you, and good thing you did because nobody had notes.
Yes.
And so this report helps master fundamentals like ensuring the clarity and blending of the human and AI note taking together. But can you share an example of where you've seen these practices really improve meeting outcomes?
Yeah, really great question. So just a few weeks ago, I was actually working with a pretty senior group of IT directors, and they were at a major organization. And I asked them, I always ask people in the beginning, I say, how many meetings are you in a given week? And I got a range of answers between 30 and 50 meetings a week
Oh my
that
God.
people are in,
Oh
right?
my
And I said,
God.
tell me about some of the things. How is that impacting your day to day, your productivity, your efficiency? And they were saying, some of our meetings have 8 people, some of them have 10 people. Sometimes we're not clear on who's even making the decision.
Oh,
Sometimes we're not clear on who to involve. So if you extrapolate that and you think back, I would say that actually the meeting line item in a budget about where your employees are spending their time and how much time they spend in a meeting may actually be the biggest corporate expense that you have. If your leaders are spending 60% of their week in meetings itself, and think about how many people are in those meetings and what's the input and what's the output of those meetings. If those meetings are not effective and efficient and done in a clear outcome driven way, then you're spending a lot of money on things that may not be
Yeah.
productive. And so some of the fundamentals I'm talking about get back to the basics, like we talked about at the beginning of just process. Like, what is the goal we're trying to accomplish? What are our desired outcomes? What do we want to leave the meeting with? Most people make the mistake when they're doing agenda design and meeting preparation of just coming in with a topical list.
Mm.
But we would push you to go further. We would say, what's the outcome? What are you going to leave the meeting with? Is it an agreement on how you're going to reduce the budget by 10%? Don't just say, discuss the budget. That's not an outcome.
Yeah.
Every meeting itself is a discussion. So getting super clear on some of these fundamentals can have a huge impact in an organization because our research and our practices will show that over time, people have less meetings. The meetings they have are actually higher quality because they have done more thinking, and they're getting better results because they're much more crisp and clear on what are the agreements and what is the understanding they have to actually move whatever strategy or initiative they're doing, move that forward in a group setting.
And from your perspective, how can leaders balance the efficiency that these AI tools bring with the human facilitation skills that would make the meetings more truly collaborative?
Yeah, I think AI is only going to get better and better. I think the ability for people to track information is super important. Now we have all these tools, but we also have to understand that there's a limit of how much information somebody can take in. And so if
Hmm.
there's too many things happening at once, people's minds, maybe AI can keep up, but like people can't keep up with that level of speed. And so we have to be very mindful about giving people something very specific at a certain time to work on. So the analogy I always like to use with people is you're like a Sherpa. If you know anything about Mount Everest, you know that it's actually illegal to climb Mount Everest by yourself now. You have to have a Nepali
Oh,
Sherpa to get to the summit of Everest. And
wow.
there's different base camps along the way. And most people believe that you go from base camp 0 to the summit, but that's actually not how the Everest climbers do it. You go to base camp 1, then you go to 2, and then you go down the mountain to 1 because you're acclimating. Then you go up to 3, but there's a storm coming, so you need to go back down to 2 for a day, and then you make the summit.
Mm.
So that's like the meeting facilitator who's using the AI and leveraging the AI. They're taking people along the way, along the mountain to different base camps and being super clear about what they're doing. And they're even using voice commands that maybe the AI can then track. And they're saying things like, okay, AI, note taker, make sure you write down X, Y, and Z. Alicia's going to do X, and that's going to be done by October 1st. And being super clear about that actually improves the AI output because it's that mirror. It's that mirror that we talked about. And
Mm.
so that's the practice I would give is like leaning into facilitation skills will actually supercharge the AI output. Because if you don't do that, if you just throw the AI tools on, yes, people may feel better. Oh, I don't have to take notes. But I would say it's not going to revolutionize your meeting practice. If anything, people are going to be stressed because there's actually a little bit of chaos and information overload. So we really want to
Yeah.
be mindful about what's the process, what are we trying to do, and what's the common practice that everybody can get behind. I think that's really important.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's so fascinating because I never thought about this area of how these AI tools are supposedly helping the humans with their meetings, but I
Yes.
never thought about you still have to conduct the meetings in a way that you help the AI help you.
Yes. Yes.
And it's so interesting and fascinating to me. I never
Yeah, and there's
thought
been
about that.
advances like I remember 24 months ago when I started looking at this, you didn't have the real-time AI. So what I meant by that is it would literally take a recording of the meeting, it would then pump it through a GPT post-meeting, and then there was like a churn where maybe you get an output 30 minutes later. Now they've done it where they've compressed that time where it's even in the meeting. You can
Yeah.
come in late to a meeting, and if the AI has been running since the meeting begins, you could say, hey, AI meeting assistant, what have I missed in the last 15 minutes? And it could give you a great summary synopsis. So that's a super good way to do it. The other thing I would say is Zoom is a good example. I've actually seen them start to do this, but you can pay extra money to get a higher tier within Zoom, specifically their AI companion. And what that unlocks for you is the ability to get into the back end of the AI and actually tailor and customize the meeting note output. So
Oh,
instead of just getting the default Zoom output, which is like summary and then suggested actions, you can actually program the AI backend and say, I want my decisions in a table. I want the first line to always be the date. I always want the second line to be who showed up and the third line to be who didn't show up. Like you can configure the
wow.
information output, which I think is incredible. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know about that yet because it's a relatively new thing that's just hit the market.
I didn't know about it. I'm gonna have to go around digging through it now.
Yeah, totally.
But that would be
Totally.
much more helpful. That information
Much
then
more
would be much
helpful.
more helpful to you. Yeah.
Much more helpful. Yeah, I think the tailoring piece, like making it work for the person, I think that's really the future is like, how do we make it work for each person in their own way? Instead of a corporate support tool where it's the same for everybody, everybody processes information differently. So we've got to
Yeah.
like really get it down to that person. I think that's really the future.
Oh, you already answered the next question. I was like looking ahead, how do you see the role of AI in meetings and collaboration evolving over the next couple of years, and what will effective meetings look like in the near future?
Yeah, I think to me, there's two main things. I think number one is you will see in the next few years, you're going to start seeing the introduction of AI agents in meetings. So taking the AI meeting assistant concept and taking it one level on to really have a personal agent. And my belief is that the agent itself may not actually be a separate avatar that joins your meeting. It
Mhm.
may be built and nested into whatever your video conference meeting platform is, where it's inside your own avatar and you can configure it for yourself on how do I extract the action item. So I could
Oh,
imagine a future where, let's say you had a meeting and you had this AI tool that's embedded in your own video conferencing system. Imagine a meeting in the future where it's a 30-minute meeting. Right after the meeting ends, a screen pops up on your computer that shows you suggested actions with the task, the owner, and the due date. And you can very quickly scan and verbally even give it the computer commands and say, delete row 9, delete row 11, change row 10 to this day, and then click a button and the AI will take that information and send it to another system like Asana or Microsoft Planner or whatever task management system you use. So I think you're going to have that autonomous ability where it's serving as the assistant, but then it's doing some of the back end administrative work that begrudgingly most people just really don't like to do. I
yeah.
think AI is going to get there. And then the second trend I see really happening is people. I think people are going to be much more comfortable. I'm already starting to see this in my own experiences, but much more comfortable using AI itself,
Hmm.
not necessarily the meeting assistants, but generative AI as a thought partner in meetings itself. So, what do I mean by that? If you're having a strategic meeting or a creativity meeting, I'm meaning the facilitator giving the group some sort of thought exercise, people individually or independently thinking about something, and then maybe with a partner comparing notes, then pulling up some generative AI tool where you're feeding that information in and saying, what are we not thinking about?
Hmm.
What's the downside of doing these things? And having the AI be kind of that third partner that can really think about things or categorize information or even go out and do analytics in real time,
Yeah.
go out and model this, take our financials from our annual report, model what these situations will look like in real time, and come back to us and do some of that analytical work. I think you're going to start to see people really leaning in and leveraging that capability real time in meetings itself.
I think that would be exciting. It would just save so much time.
Yeah, the analogy I give is if you've seen the movie Iron Man, Tony
Mhm.
Stark, who is this incredible guy, he's got Jarvis. Jarvis is his computer and he can move things around and he gives Jarvis commands. And sometimes Jarvis does things that are weird, but he brings Jarvis back in. But for the most part, Jarvis is pretty good, but he's giving specific commands to what Jarvis can do.
Mhm.
That's going to be really the future. I really do think there's a day not too far in the distant future where we're going to see some of that capability show up.
That's exciting. And for leaders or teams that are maybe just starting to explore AI meeting assistants, what practical advice would you give them to ensure they do adopt these tools in a way that actually strengthens the collaboration?
Yeah, really good question. I think number one, you have to really begin with the end in mind. Like, who
Mhm.
is your team? How are they using it? There's lots of AI meeting assistants on the marketplace, but some of them are really tailored for specific use cases. Some of them, for example, are really good for a salesperson. They do
Mm.
coaching. They do sentiment analysis where they're analyzing words that maybe your customer or buyer is saying. So really understanding like matching the tool to the role is super important. I think as leaders, you also have to really prioritize feature set. You cannot do everything. So what are we prioritizing? Is it cost? Is it privacy? Is it security? Is it accuracy? Is it analytics? What are the things we really prioritize? We have to remember that. And then the third thing we really have to remember, even though we have all this AI coming out, is that humans are really fundamental. Really fundamental. We can't forget the human element. We can't just throw tools at people without getting the buy-in of people to really use the tools. Otherwise, some of this stuff, my belief is it's going to be vaporware. You're going to have a
Mhm.
lot of money invested. But if people don't see the value, if they don't see the return on investment, particularly corporate and senior executives, then there's just going to be a lot of rogue experimentation going. So I think you have to
Yeah.
really be mindful, really begin with the end in mind and make conscious choices. I do believe experimentation is the way to do it, though. Take a small group, pilot it before you roll out to your organization, and
Mhm.
just be flexible. AI is constantly changing. So I think that requires
Yeah.
us to be constantly being in the know of what's new, what's on the frontier, and how do we really flex in the moment.
I think that's fabulous advice. And before we wrap up, I always love to ask when you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies you're passionate about?
Yeah, I'm a really big gardener, landscaper. You'll probably find me designing something or moving something around in the landscape. That's
Mhm.
really my passion and what I enjoy doing.
I love that. Thank you, Chris, for sharing your insights on how AI is reshaping meetings and why strong facilitation still matters in today's workplace. I know for many organizations, keeping up with that hybrid and virtual collaboration can be overwhelming or confusing. You're showing what is possible with this clear path to being more productive and inclusive and secure meetings. So, thank you again for coming on and sharing your
Yeah, thank you
insights.
so much for having me. This was fun. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Oh, good. And for those who would like to learn more about Interaction Associates, you can visit their website, interactionassociates.com. Keeping you connected to tomorrow. Today, this is Alicia with AInews.com.